Okay, let's talk about the electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation. So it's happening in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. So let me show you the inner membrane of the mitochondria. So this is the outer membrane, right? And this is the inner membrane, okay? So between the outer and inner membrane, we have a special structure which is called intermembrane space, which is called intermembrane space. So this is the intermembrane space between two membranes, inner and outer membranes, okay? So this portion is matrix. This whole portion is called the matrix, okay, of the mitochondria, where the PDC and Krebs cycle happens. So what's the main goal of electron transport chain? So oxidative phosphorylation, this is the process of generating the ATP by using the energy derived from the electron transport chain located in the inner membrane. So our main task is to use electrons from NADH and FADH₂. Do you remember we made a lot of we made NADH, a lot of FADH₂s, right? FADH₂s. We made a lot during the glycolysis. We made 2 NADH, right? During the glycolysis, we made 2 NADH. During the PDC, we made 2 NADH. During the Krebs cycle, we made 6 NADH, right? What about FADH₂? What about FADH₂? FADH₂, we made only in the Krebs cycle, only 2 FADH₂, right? What about ATP? How many ATPs we made? Let's count. Before that, ATP we made in the glycolysis. We made 2 net ATPs. In the PDC, we haven't, but in the Krebs cycle, we did also 2 ATPs, right? So totally we produced 4 ATPs, and totally we produced 10 NADH and 2 FADH₂. This is the total result so far. So what's more, electron carriers or ATPs? Of course, electron carriers are more. The function of the electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation to use these electrons, and to make the ATP from these electrons, okay? So the use of electrons from NADH and FADH to make the ATP is the energy body of your cell, okay? The total 30 to 34 ATP we can produce from per 1 molecules of the glucose, okay? So to make it happen, I need special players in this process, okay? I need NADH, I need FADH₂, I need the complexes. This is the actually inner membrane of the mitochondria, okay? This is the matrix of the mitochondria, and this is intermembrane space. This is the space between the outer membrane and inner membrane, okay? This is the inner membrane. In the inner membrane, we have a lot of structures. You see, this is complex. We have a special complexes, which we call complex 1, complex 2, complex 3, complex 4, and complex 5. This is the complex 5, okay? Which we call the ATP synthase, okay? And we have a lot of hydrogens here, proton pumps, as you can see here. So protons pumped into the intermembrane space. So, and you can see the oxygen molecules as well. So this is the oxygen in order to make the money. So this is the oxygen molecule, okay? So oxygen is really important. Why it's important? So we will talk it very soon, okay? So electron is entering to the chain. So you see this NADH, this is the NADH. So one NADH yields to the 3 ATP molecule. So NADH drops of electrons at complex 1. It's dropping off electrons. You see, NADH is dropping off these electrons. You see, 2 electrons, for example, are dropped here. And each NADH is going to make 3 ATP molecules. And 2.5 in some literatures, or 3. And FADH₂, it drops off at complex 2. NADH works with the complex 1. FADH₂ works with complex 2 always, okay? It's working with complex 2, and FADH₂ always bringing its electrons to the complex 2, always, okay? So each FADH₂ is making 2 ATPs. NADH1 makes 3 ATPs. Each FADH₂ is going to make 2 ATPs. Okay, why is the difference? Because FADH2 entering later in this chain. First, the NADH is entering. After that, the FADH2 is entering. It's entering later. Pumps fewer hydrogen. Okay, it's pumping fewer hydrogen. We should pump the hydrogen. Okay, NADH. It is giving off the electrons and it's giving off the protons as well. And those protons will be pumped out. It will be pumped out to the intermembrane space with these complexes, okay? And FADH2 is the same. It's going to pump, it's not, but it's not going to pump the hydrogen, okay? Second, FADH2 is not going to pump, okay? Um, that's why it's producing less ATP molecules, okay? So what's happening next? Electron transfers through the complexes are happening. Why we are calling electron transport chain? Because we are going to transfer the electrons throughout these complexes as a chain, which are located, which are structured as a chain. That's why we are calling it electron transport chains, okay? The electrons are passed like a baton from one complex to the next, okay? As they move, the energy is released. As those electrons move, the energy is released. This energy is used to pump the hydrogen, which is proton, into the intermembrane space. And this builds up the proton gradient. You see, whenever they are moving throughout the complexes, the protons are moving inside. The first complex is moving protons. The second won't move the protons to the intermembrane space. Only the third one is moving the protons to the intermembrane space. And the fourth one is also moving into the intermembrane space, but the second is not. Okay, this building up of the proton gradient is called chemiosmotic gradient, which means high hydrogen outside and low inside. It's chemiosmotic gradient. Okay, so what's happening next? It's a complex 4. This is the complex 4. Electrons meet. You see, this electron traveled to the second and the first, they join it together. Second and the first and second complex electrons join it together. They move to the third pump the hydrogen to outside. And from the third, those electrons are moving with cytochrome 3C to the fourth complex. And all those electrons from first are came to the fourth one. All the electrons collected here, okay, where all electrons meet here. Oxygen from the breathing, this oxygen which you are breathing and the hydrogen ions, they're going to form the water molecules, okay? So with the electrons, this oxygen that you breathe and the hydrogen which is inside, which is proton, they're going to mix together and those electrons will be accepted by the oxygen and they're going to make water, okay? So without the oxygen, the whole chain stops. Why those electrons are going to the oxygen? If they won't go to the oxygen, if they will stay here, the electrons will be stuck in the fourth complex. And then the third complex also will be stuck. Okay, second and first also will be stuck. That means NADH and FADH2, they will be also stuck. They will be also full. They will not be oxidized again. They will be always in the reduced state. That means they cannot bring again the electrons here. That means all this process is going to stop. Every information we have learned so far is going to be stopped. Okay, that means no ATP is made here. That's why this process is important, and oxygen at the end should accept those electrons. So in the complex 4, all the electrons came here, they should go to the oxygen, it should empty, and the electron from the third again comes to the fourth. And this chain never stops. That's why it's called electron transport chain. We shouldn't stop it, okay? So without oxygen, the whole chain stops, no ATP will be produced. If no ATP, the cell is going to die. Okay, for example, we have a poisoning which is called cyanide poisoning. The complex 4 is blocked here. Oxygen cannot accept the electrons. That means rapid death due to the ATP shutdown. Okay, so what is the ATP synthase is doing? Let's talk about the complex 5 here. What's the complex 5 is doing? This is the power generator, okay? Now we have built a wall of hydrogen outside. You see those hydrogen that was pumped because of the electrons in the complexes. The electrons moved, and by the way, when they moved, they pumped out the hydrogen outside to the intermembrane space, right? Now that we have built a wall of hydrogen outside, and that those proton hydrogen wants to come back in, okay, like a water behind the dam. Damba, let's say this is the damba. There is a lot of water. It want to go inside now, okay. It's like they want to go inside. So what's going to happen then? For this comes to help this uh, ATP synthase, which is complex 5. This is uh, that spinning energy is used too, okay. So imagine we have ATPs, a lot of ATPs are collected so far. What I'm going to do with the oxidative phosphorylation. So what's the meaning of oxidative phosphorylation? This is the adding of the phosphate using oxygen driven energy. Okay, this is oxidative phosphorylation, adding a phosphate using oxygen-driven energy. So what does it mean? When the proton moves inside, when the proton moves inside of the cell, it's going to go through the fifth complex, which is called ATP synthase. When ATP, they walk through the interface synthase, when they go through it, what's going to happen? ATP synthase is going to make a lot of ATP molecules. From the ATP, they're going to phosphorylate it and they're going to produce the ATP molecules. Okay. So this is actually what we need. So this is actually how we produce the ATP from the electrons we have been using. Okay. So ATP synthase is the wheel that spins as water flows down. It's like a wheel. When the protons they go inside to the matrix, when they go inside, they're going to spin and generate the electricity, ATP. It's like a gas, hydroelectrostanza. It's like a gas, but hydrogen electrostanza. It looks like to the proton electrostanza. So when the protons move, they're going to the wheel is going to move as well, and it's going to generate the electricity, which is ATP. Okay. Oxygen is like a drain at the end. It keeps the water flowing. If the drain is closed, that means the system backs up and stops. So this is just my first explanation to the oxidative phosphorylation for the general idea. Now we will move and we will try to understand more, okay? So the location, always don't forget the location of the electron transport chain. This is the inner membrane of mitochondria. Never ever forget it. It's not the matrix. It's not the cytoplasm. Okay. So NADH and FADH, main players from the glycolysis, PTC, and Krebs cycle, they're going to bring the electrons to this process. Okay, they're going to bring the electrons. You see the NADH the NADH and FADH2, they're going to bring the electrons, which they brought it from the glycolysis, PTC, and the Krebs. They drop them off in the electron transport chain membrane. They dropping it off. Okay, this is like charging up the battery. The electrons are the electric currents. Okay, and then those electrons are going to pump the protons outside. Okay, high proton will be outside, low proton will be inside. The difference is proton motive force. And now this proton wants to flow back into the matrix as well. This is the matrix. This is the outer membrane, inner membrane. This is intermembrane space. Then they want to go inside. Okay. So it generates energy, ATP after that. Okay. What's the role of oxygen? The role of the oxygen, it accepts the electrons and it accepts the hydrogen and it's going to make the water. Without the oxygen, electrons will be backed up. They will be stuck here. The whole chain stops, no ATP, and the cell is going to die. Okay. So let's calculate it again. Do you remember we have calculated we had 10 NADH. So 10 NADH. So each NADH is going to produce 3 ATP. Totally, we are producing 30 ATP. And each FADH is going to produce 4. So 2 multiplied to the 2 sorry, if FADH produces 2 ATPs, that means 2 FADH is going to produce 4. So if we add them, there will be 34 molecules of the ATP. And we generated the ATP molecules in the Krebs cycle and in the pyruvate in the Krebs cycle, we produced the ATP. In the glycolysis, we also produced the ATP. If I add 4, that will be 38. So totally 38 ATP molecules are made in this process. Okay, you should know about it. Totally 38 we are making. Okay. So what's the meaning of gradient? I said here the proton pump gradient is made. So gradient, this is the difference in the proton concentrations across the membrane. Okay, inside is less, outside is more. This is called the gradient. Okay, oxidation means NADH and FADH, they lose the electrons. NADH and FADH₂, they're doing the oxidation process. By doing oxidation, they are making NAD plus and FADs. Okay. So hydrogen flowing back into the matrix. Here the hydrogen is flowing back to the matrix with facilitated diffusion from the higher concentration to the lower concentration. Okay, with facilitated diffusion because we are using special protein channels. Okay, so regarding this, I think step one, what's happening? NADH and FADH, they are donoring the electrons, dropping off the electrons to the protein complexes, to the inner mitochondrial membrane. This is the inner membrane. This is outer membrane. You shouldn't confuse between them, okay? Always look to the instructions. NADH gives off electrons to the first complex. This is also important. FADH₂ giving it to the second complex. This is the first complex, okay? This is the third complex. This is fourth complex. This is fifth complex, which is ATP synthase. I call it ATP synthase. So they become NAD plus and FAD again, ready to be used. Then electrons are going to travel along the chain. The electrons move from the complex to the complex. This releases the energy as a step. You see, from the complex to complex, they are moving. That energy is used to pump the hydrogen to the intermembrane space. This creates high concentration of the hydrogen outside the inner membrane, which is in the intermembrane space. Then proton gradient is made. There is a lot of hydrogen, which is proton in the intermembrane space here, and the less hydrogen inside the matrix. This is called the proton gradient, okay? And the force is hydrogen is going to flow back inside. So to the matrix, they can only cross through the ATP synthase. There is no way the large spinning machine is end, okay? As hydrogen flows in, it spins and creates the ATP. This is oxidative phosphorylation because it needs oxygen and adds phosphate to ATP, okay? It's adding phosphate to the ATP and making ATP molecule, and we need the oxygen here in order to oxidize, okay? And then oxygen accepting the electrons here from the complex 4, oxygen is accepting the electrons and combines with hydrogen to make the water. If there is no oxygen, electrons cannot move, chain stops, no ATP, and the cell is going to die. Okay, so this is all you should know about it. Okay, these are the questions, and this is also solved question. Thank you very much. Thanks for the attention. I hope it was understandable. It is one of the difficult topics